Hey everyone, welcome to Watch It Paint It. In this video, we'll be looking at a new campaign that's about to launch on Kickstarter, and that is Shattered Hell. Guys, I just want to quickly mention, get this out of the way right at the beginning, that this video has in fact been paid for. Dun, dun, dun. So just bear that in mind with anything that I say. And remember, guys, you can't buy me. You cannot buy my opinion. Well, maybe with enough Pringles, but nobody sent me any Pringles, so don't worry about that here.
We're trapped in a Pringles commercial. They must have taken us in our sleep.
This upcoming campaign is going to be for a new set of miniatures of hellish origins, including some heroes to battle them. It looks like there's going to be about 50 miniatures by the end of this campaign. That's an impressively large amount of miniatures that I'm excited to see. And this campaign is going to be run by Crippled God Foundry. They've been around for about 5 years, so it's not a brand new company or anything like that. They've already run one successful, I say one, like that's a small fate, but they've already had a successful campaign, Kickstarter campaign. It was the Curse of Hollow Hills, and they raised a whopping $75,000. That's pretty impressive. Over 700 backers. So, you know, these guys seem to mean business, and they also already sell their miniatures on both their website, and they've got a successful Patreon, much bigger than mine. Wow. Some quick stats on the miniatures themselves. They're going to be of scale 28 to 32 millimeter, that heroic scale that probably a lot of you know more about than myself. They're apparently, I'm going to take their word for it, I've seen some of their previous work, but they'll be high quality detailed sculpts, and they're going to be made from resin, but also, and I don't always see this, so it's nice that they've bothered to do it, you're going to be able to grab the 3D print files for any of you kids from the future out there who would like to print their own miniatures. As for us muggles like myself, the shipping will be worldwide, so it's available to everyone. Guys, I will leave a link in the description below if you want to check out this campaign. So in this specific video, I'm going to be painting up this grotesque blob looking miniature. When I did the unboxing video, this one really stood out to me. I just think I love it. I've not seen anything like this in any of the games I've got before, and I really want to see what it looks like painted up. Having said that, I think in this video I'm going to actually try and use contrast paints. I think these are high quality detailed miniatures, and I'm wondering if because of that you can apply some quick contrast paint and actually let the miniature do all of the work for us, and it will just pop out those details. It's got a lot of details, and hopefully they can work for me and allow me to do a really quick paint job off the back of the miniature being really high quality. I'm going to test that hypothesis. I'm not sure if it's true, but we'll find out in this video together, and I've got plenty more of these miniatures to try different painting techniques. So I'm getting a big green blob vibe from this guy, and I'm going to go with Plague Bearer skin, Plague Bearer flesh even, all over the skin of this beast. I've got a feeling he's got some eyeballs here. What do you think? Do you think their eyeballs are just strategically placed blobs of missing flesh? I'm not quite sure, but I'll paint around them. I'll paint them in as though I'm going to do eyeballs and try and get the eyelids as best I can. Yeah, we're just going to see how well contrasting this little fella up does. I'm excited though. Paint's taking well. I've used Wraithbone Primer, Citadel's contrast primer for this. That's the sort of warmer of the two choices that we have, and that's because I think for organic creatures, beings, miniatures is probably the best word there. I think for organic ones, the Wraithbone Primer looks best. So there's not going to be too much to watch here because this guy's mostly flesh, isn't he? That's exactly why I think this contrast technique could be a winner chicken dinner. We'll find out. I'll whiz round and paint all of the skin, which is most of the miniature done, using this Plague Bearer flesh. So that's the skin done. I have to say, I like where this is going. That was not a lot of work, and the details popping out and looking nice. I think once I start tidying that up, it's going to look absolutely fantastic. We'll see as we go through the video. Now, I did notice the detail on this miniature looks like his eyeballs stitched shut. So these are definitely eyeballs here and here then. So I'll be painting those in with real paint a bit later on. For now, I'm just going to be doing some of these, his gums on both of his mouths and this little tongue worm sticking out here. For that, I'll be using this Fire Slayer flesh, which I think is a nice, disgusting, fleshy colour. So that's going to suit him well. I probably should use a bigger brush for this part of his snake tongue, but I was using my 0 for around his mouth, because I don't want to get any on his teeth if I can help it, because that'll be harder to paint over with a lighter colour, which I'll use for his teeth later. So I'll go and add this paint, so it'll be all around his tongue, probably his real tongue as well, and his gum line, any gums that I can see sticking through as well. Now the skin's all dry, I'm going to paint in some of these sorts of tears in his flesh, also using this Fire Slayer flesh, just giving some depth to the miniature and giving him some more colours, breaking it up a little bit. I think it'll make it cool overall, a bit more interesting. Also, while it was drying, I've just painted on some of these pus modules back in the original Wraith Bone colour of the primer, because I think, again, I'm just going to add some more blends of colours to this miniature, make it a little bit more interesting, and probably yellow. And I also put the primer back on these sorts of bones that are sticking out of his flesh. I'm going to paint those in some colours. It's just adding the detail to the miniature that it deserves, still using contrast paints, but it starts to make it all come together. Time to add some pus balls with Eandon yellow. Just going to find all of these nodules, whatever, these lumpy yucky bits that I painted back on with the primer, and just get these looking just a bright yellow, just to add some variety to his skin. Whoop, put way too much on there. Let's try and spread that around a bit more. Slurp some back up. Be able to fix that shortly. Keep getting too much on the brush here. Just remember, you can slurp some back up, but maybe just be a bit more careful. Don't paint with a camera in your way, that sort of thing. All the standard recommendations. He's looking more and more grotesque with every colour added to his skin. He's yucky. I'm going to use some Basilicum Grey, nice darkish grey, although it's coming out quite light here because of how thin I'm putting this on. And that's going to be to build up the base coat. I'm going to go a bit thicker now. In fact, I'll catch the eyes. I'm going to paint these eyes in after the fact. Oh, I'll try and avoid these little spines that are coming out, because I'm going to paint those like they're bone, I think. But yeah, eyes are fine because I'm going to paint those back in. May as well get them looking dark. And avoid these bones because I'm going to use contrast on those. And yeah, just get a base coat for this sword. I think I'm going to paint the sword as though it's metallic, but we'll give it a grey base coat in contrast. Avoiding the hilty part. We'll paint that in metallic, I think, just to give it some interesting detail. No, I just went straight over one of those spines I said avoid. Wipes off quite easily, luckily for me. There's another one there that I almost went over. So I'll do both sides of the sword. I'm also going to paint, while I've got this colour out, I'm going to paint these rocks in too down on the base. Just give them a lick of this Basilicum Grey. I'll probably do all three in the same colour. Bit boring, but it is what I'm going to try. Do this one as well and do that one at the back. So I'm just going to finish painting in this grey. So I'm a little bit concerned about this choice. I'm going to try using Black Templar, black contrast paint, and that's to paint in his pie hole here. It might just be a little bit too dark, but I think it'll really make the mouth stand out immensely and create a bit of a void, which I think has got to either be black or some sort of flesh colour, hasn't it? So let's try black. If it's too strong, by all means, don't use black. Use some sort of flesh. But given that I did his gums and I've done a lot of these rips in his skin, flesh colours, I just wanted to move away to a different colour. So I'm just going to paint that in black. I'm going to do it a lot closer to my face because that's really hard to get to, but I'm liking how that's looking already. Actually really like how that black mouth's coming out. Pro tip, guys, if you are following this along, paint the mouth before you stick this in. It was really hard to reach in there. Made it difficult. I had to touch up some teeth, but it's a good choice of colour, I think. I'm going to use a bit of Skeleton Horde. It's very sort of pale, light, bony, brown colour. Now to paint on these for want of a better word, coming out of his person, sort of piercing through. I think these will look nice as a little bone colour. Might darken them up with some wash, depending how they look as they dry. But I'll go around, find all of these. Don't mind getting some in the recess, giving him a bit of a shadow as they go into his body. I'll also get the ones over here on his sword too. It's like his sword's organic, isn't it? I'm really not sure if I should paint it metallic. I mean, I'm going to, because that's what I mean, I already knew it looked organic, and I decided I'll try and paint it metallic anyway. I'm not sold on that being the right choice. Let me know in the comments below. Do let me know how you would paint this sword. Definitely could be sort of like fleshy. I don't know. I think it would be difficult. I'm not quite sure how to do it myself. Right, I'll just go and paint up all these spines. Oh, should mention, it's not just going to be his spines. I'm going to do his teeth. So these will get a disgusting browny bone colour to them, like so. And I'll also do these horns on his head, all three of them. Forgot about all of these. We'll see how they look once they're dry. I might build, this has got sort of 3 layers of bone, or 4 actually. Didn't notice that top one until I added the paint and the details out. Might build those up. We'll see how this dries, see what needs to be done. There's loads, isn't there? The skeleton horde's going to get loads done. I'm going to try and do his whole mouth here. I think I don't need to paint this one in black because the contrast will settle in the gaps and it'll look quite dark anyway. I don't think it needs to be as drastic as his belly mouth, his old belly mouth. There's loads of skeleton horde to do. I missed mentioning tons of bits. He's got all his nails. He's got a little mini mouth here. Get up in my mini mouth.
I like to eat you with my little mouth too.
Oh, now y'all get back up inside me, little mouth.
I wants to play too.
Get back inside. I'll get you when we's eating them.
Zoop.
But he had his teeth there to do, and he's got his nails down here. Just made sure I've gone round and then getting some of the contrast paint into his, what do you call them, these cuticles, and give him some definition between his toes. Why do I know more about pedicures than weapons? And then he's also got his fingernails over here, so I'll get those. These are going to be a little bit difficult to reach, but I'll take my time and get some on there, and it's I think we're finally there with the skeleton horde. I'm switching back to my size 2 brush now onto the last big area I'm going to do, and the last contrast paint. This is that wild wood contrast paint, really dark brown. And I did and ah actually about what colour to do this base, whether I should do it as sort of mud or as sand. Oh, difficult choice. Thought about using Agros Dunes, which is a sandy colour, like a June colour. So that would look cool too. And maybe do one of the other miniatures using that coloured contrast. Either way, it's going to be a dead quick application. As you can see, I'm doing it pretty thick here. I don't mind how this pools, as long as I don't get any tide marks per se. I just want to spread this around quickly, and it's going to be a really easy, simple step. And it's a great way to stay in shape. Going to get this rim round here as well. I'll probably paint this part just in plain black and bring your attention back to the miniature itself. So I'm going to add a wild wood all the way round, trying to not get any on the rocks. Well, that's enough freeloading off of these contrast paints. It's time to do some real work and some normal paints now. I'm a big fan of these Army Painter metallics, and I'm going to use some rough iron to paint in this big set of keys he's got. I actually noticed this sculpt came with, oh, it's right here, a choice. You could either give him the keys or just his normal hand. I opted for the keys because I thought it would make for a more interesting model to paint. But if you just want a hand, there's a choice. I'm a fan of having the choice, even though I don't know why I'd ever choose just the hand. Let me know in the comments below why you might use just a hand and not have an additional point of interest on the miniature. But nevertheless, I like the choice because, you know, that can go in my box of bits. Maybe I can use that extra hand for a detached limb on a base of a miniature in the future. Some sort of slayed detached arm, something like that. We'll see, we'll see. It's nice to have the choice anyway. So I'm going to paint all of these keys, the base coat, in this rough iron. For the sword, I'm going to try and get this looking a sort of antique gold, ancient gold style. And for that I'm using Army Painter's brand new Cursed Blade. That came in that new D&D set that I picked up. And I'm a big fan of this colour as well. As I just said previously, I'm a fan of the metallic range that Army Painter do. And I've not seen this colour before. So I'm really digging this at the moment. And it's going to add... I'm already seeing just finishing off the miniature. Finishing off a miniature makes a big difference, doesn't it? Once you get rid of those final bits of unpainted miniature, I feel like the whole thing just really starts to take form. And then, yeah, adding on some details. I'm always just so surprised how it ties that contrast paint together and starts making the paint job look so much better. So I'm going to paint the whole of this last part of his sword in this Cursed Blade. Behind here, I'm going to get that nice and close to my face so I don't get it all down the rest that we've already painted. So I'm about to go to bed for the night, and before I go and sleep, it's a perfect time to add some wash because it takes a while to dry. I'm going to use Army Painter's Deep Shader, which is a dark brown wash, and I'm going to add this to his horns. What I'm going to do is cover, they sort of go up in 4 segments, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I'm going to cover the first 3 segments in 1 coat of this deep tone, and then I'm going to add a second coat to the next 2, and then 1/3 coat just to the bottom one, and that's going to add some gradient to his horns and just give them a little bit of interesting detail as it moves down from the top where it'll be the brightest bit. You could also do this in reverse order if that tickled your fancy. It would be a different look. Nevertheless, an interesting look. But I think it's going to add some definition and some interesting point to his sort of focal point, which is his face. I'll also add a little smidge. This is going to be a little bit harder because it's not built up in segments, but I'll just make his center horn pop out a little bit too, just getting a little bit towards the bottom. And just one more wash before I head off. I'm going to use Army Painter's Horde shader here, but for me, any of the green tones should do, and that's just to add a wash, some depth to this ancient gold that I added to his sword. A dark brown wash would give a nice effect as well, a different effect, a black wash. Any wash you choose here is going to give an interesting effect, but I'm going to go for green. I've used it in the past, and I enjoyed how it came out in the end. So I'll go around this whole thing, and that's going to pop out all the details. It's got lots of little lumps and bumps. It's a very textured sword here, and it's going to pop out all those textures, make this look awesome. Now that wash is all dried, I'm going to start adding that second coat, as mentioned, and this time just to these 2 layers. So another round of deep shader, and just building up the bottom second layer. I'm going to add some detail to these keys with a little bit of dry brushing. Just going to use Army Painter's machine gun metal and just lightly drag this across here, just using the old dry brushing technique to add some shine on top of this rough iron. I'm just going to work this all the way around, just catching it, probably do a few coats, see how it looks. Careful around his hand, don't want to catch any on his skin. Even lighter on the inside where it would be darker, a bit more of the rough iron left on the inside there. Give it a nice impression of some shade, some shadows. I'll get a little bit round. I'm not topping up my dry brush here. I'm letting it run out and get lighter and lighter on the back of his hand where it would be much darker around the back. I'm going to boost that highlight with Army Painter's lighter silver. I'm going to use Claymore Blade in this instance. I've not even cleaned off the machine gun metal, so I don't mind it being a little bit darker. But for this, I'm going to be a lot more careful. Just catch the very edges of these keys just to give a shiny sort of edge highlight. Be a little bit gentle across here. I think they'd be a bit shinier here, like so. And just a little bit on the edge here. Where else would light be catching? Down this main one at the front. And then just a teeny tiny bit down here. Just really, this is just adding a bit of depth. All these layers of silver, just making these keys stand out and look a little bit more realistic. Now, I mentioned this sort of stone sword here. I could leave it like that. It's very tempting. By all means, leave it like this if you like this look. I'm probably going to paint in these eyes. I think it's almost like a living sword, but let's risk it for a biscuit. I'm going to try lightly dry brushing this claymore blade over his sword as well, which will make it look just a very slight metallic. And the main reason for doing this is I wanted these eyes to pop out, and I wasn't sure how to do that really. I don't want to paint them like real eyes, although I'll probably give them real eyeballs and these veins as well. And I think this dry brush silver is going to look a little bit more interesting along those eyes, and it's already giving that impression. Not very metallic, it's kind of hard to see. It's very, very subtle. I'm liking it. I'll just build this up slightly and get the inside and see how that looks. Just off camera, I added in a little variety here. I added a copper key amongst those. I actually think maybe these keys in different metallics could look really good. To me, I was a little bit disappointed in the miniature because all these keys are identical, so I kind of painted them all silver to match all identically. But I wanted to do one just to see if that looked any more interesting. I think it does, and maybe all four differently could be a boost to your painted miniature. I'm going to start painting in the eyes now, and for that I'm going to be using a colour I've never used before, this Hydra Turquoise by the Army Painter. Let's just water it down even more. I thought I'd watered it down enough, but I thought wrong. I want this to go on super thin. I may well have to do a fair few coats. Yeah, it's going to take a few coats to build up this colour, but I'm liking the shade. I'll get this other one here off camera where I can get it a bit closer to my face, and I think I'm going to do the sword. Oh yeah, it's nice against the silver. I mean, basically, pick a colour you like at this point. This is going to be personal preference, and I've not used this colour, and I think it's an interesting colour, so I thought I'd give it a try. For the pupils on his eyes, I've just got my smallest detail brush, a quadruple 0, and painted in some black pupils, lines like a snake. I just popped those on each of those. Pretty happy with those eyes. They look pretty terrifying, although it's small detail. All my eyes are too blurry. I have to get pretty close to see it. So maybe a brighter colour if you want to make those pop out a bit more. I've gone for quite subtle here. Right, I'm going to be working on the final bit of detail, and for this I'm going to use a little bit of crusted saw. I'm going to try and get some of the detailing on his sort of sewn shut eyelids here. For that, I've got it super watered down. I'm just going to try and get this to pull around like so. Hopefully this is coming across around these strings. This I don't know what he would have used to sew it shut, but I'm going to paint that back on in some sort of stringy colour. I'm just painting it as though it's got sort of dried, crusted saws underneath. There we go, something like that. Now, the question is, should we get some in the gap? I think so. Something like that, and maybe under his eyelid as well. Just want to make it obvious what this is, because it's only a small amount of detail. Something like that, and then I think we'll make that all stand out good by painting those strings back on once that's dry. While we're waiting for his eye sores to heal, to dry, I thought I'd give this guy a quick rim job. Now, it's an important part of doing the miniature. It's going to finish it off, and suddenly it's going to look like a completed miniature, and it's also going to bring focal point back to the actual miniature and away from this mess at the bottom. So I always do it in black, but there's colour choice is yours, whatever suits you, whatever might make playing the game a little bit easier. Sometimes monsters are one colour, heroes are another. Alternatively, I've seen metallic paints used around the rim of the base, and they look fantastic. Gold, silver, that sort of thing. You choose. I stick with black, nice and simple, and for me, once it's dry, it just suddenly looks like a complete miniature and brings our focal point back to the super coloured bit above. So it's been a little while now, and I've painted on those stitches using Necromancer cloak and a splash of filthy suit for the highlighting, making the eye look super cool. I've also been aware, and you've noticed that metallics have lost their shine now, and used Army Painter's anti-shine matte varnish spray can just to give that a nice coating so it's protected. But I'm now going to add in a little bit of shiny detail. I'm going to hopefully start with the world's smallest amount of Army Painter's glistening blood. I'm just going to add a little bit around some of the stitches on his eye as though it's a little bit fresh. Not too much. Just add in a little bit of interesting brighter colour on top of that crusted sword we painted on before. That'll do. That's all I'm going to do. If you like blood, if you like the effect, by all means, add it to his teeth, his little... What is this? Trouser snake. Add a little bit to his trouser snake if you want. Maybe some down his sword, wherever you want. It's up to you. If you like blood, add some blood. We'll carry on adding some shine back to this miniature using some paint on gloss varnish. So this is going to be a lot wetter and shinier looking than anything we had before. For that, I'm going to apply it carefully in various places. We'll make his tongue look all wet. Let's make his teeth look a little shiny too. We'll get his belly mouth as well. And do you think his gums? His gums are a bit of a risk. I'm not quite sure. I think his gums would be shiny though. Let's paint those on individually. I don't think I've ever used so much gloss varnish on a miniature. This guy's got a lot of wet. He's got his bottom row of teeth as well. His bottom gums, if you can get to any, they're infinitely harder to get to. Let's get his trouser snake. I did consider his horns as well. I'm not sure they'd be wet. I'm going to do his nails though on his toes. These nails have come out really well, given the 3 seconds I spent on them with that contrast paint. To be fair, they're probably better than I would have painted those properly. Questionable whether we should do those pus boil things, those modules on his body, those yellow bits. I wonder if they should be glossy. Maybe. I think I'm going to opt to not do it. Let me know in the comments below if you would have done those. Like that. And then he's got more nails, hasn't he? While I'm here, we want to gloss up these eyes for definite. Plenty on there. Same in there. And I think, should this be gloss? I think these rips in his flesh, a little bit shiny too. So I'll just finish up those. I'm just going to carry on with the sort of varnishing correction. And for this, I'm going to be using some satin paint on varnish this time, so it's nowhere near as shiny as that gloss, but it's a little bit shiny. And for that, I'm going to just be bringing back in the metallic that I painted on his sword. I'm actually going to leave the actual blade, inverted commas, of his sword matte. It's grey with a splash of silver, but it's lost all of its shine, and I just happen to like how it looks. By all means, bring that back up to metallic with a little bit of gloss. Satin, I'd recommend. Gloss is just a bit too shiny, I think, for metallics. Also going to use this satin varnish to put a little bit of shine back into his keys. Again, I actually like what the matte, it's why I use the matte. I do like how that anti-shine matte varnish makes things look, but just for some variance in the miniature, I'm just going to make these shine again. Spread this around. And with keeping with some variance, I will paint his horns with satin, so they're not going to be as shiny as the gloss like I considered. But let's give them a little bit, just so they stand out from the rest of his matteness. I think horns can tend to be a bit shiny, right? They're not totally matte. This one's not going to be anyway. Let's add one final bit of detail, I reckon, and that's some tufts. I've got a bunch of different Army Painter tufts here, and we're just going to place some on the miniature, make it look that little bit... Oh, I'm doing that off camera, although that's so hard to see. Looks great. I personally like it when the tufts are kind of sticking out from under rocks and things like that. Let's put a clump under his foot here, because you could see under the miniature and I was unable to get paint on that under part of his foot. There you go, that's that problem solved. And let's add some variety. What should we go with? I think some wasteland? No, Highland. Love old Highland. Is that the big one? Let's get different sizes as well. Put one under the rock at the back here. Just love how they look when they come out of the rock. And Let's get a small one here in the middle next to a small brown one. I don't actually know what these dark brown ones are. Let's stick that in there too. Oh, that's going to stick there. How's this looking? Awesome is the answer. Yeah, something like that. First miniature I've painted out of Shattered Hell, and that was an absolute blast to paint. What a lovely, lovely sculpt. Now, I did use contrast paint, as I mentioned at the start of the video, and I really do think the detail, the high quality detail, as the Kickstarter says, it really did shine and just pulled a lot of the weight for the contrast. I painted it very, very quickly, and I'm super happy with the results. I think it came out fantastic for how little effort that really was. Obviously, as normal, stuck in a load of final detail at the end, painting it a little bit, inverted commas, properly, but I'm really, really satisfied with the results. Guys, if you're interested in this, as I mentioned, the Kickstarter links will be in the description below. By all means, go and check this out and see what you think. It's looking pretty good from where I'm sitting at the minute. Got some more miniatures. I'll try and find some time to paint some of those up, at least for some review purposes, if I don't manage to get some tutorials out there. Thank you all ever so much for watching. I'll see you again next week. I'm going to start this video again because it turns out I can't actually speak very well. That you've paid a bit more of a premium price. I don't know why I'm talking about price. I don't even know if this is particularly expensive. Good. Excellent. Vibe from this guy. I'm going to have to lower my chair because I'm way too high.